Welcome back to the Skinfluence Podcast. I'm Dr. Dustin, board-certified dermatologist, joined by my co-host, Austin.
Happy to be here. It's been a while since we've sat down and done one of these sessions.
Yeah. So our audience, obviously, you're listening to us every week, but we do kind of batch these episodes. And, we've each had some vacation and been out of the office at different times. So we're glad to be back together.
Glad to be back together. We've been out getting some sun. Segueing into the topic today, sunscreen.
Diving into some sunscreen, the truth, the myths. We're going to cover it all and hopefully learn a little bit of something about why we feel it's important in the field of dermatology, how to also just live your life while using sunscreen.
Yeah.
Because I see sometimes dermatologists post online about, being at the beach or how to spot a dermatologist at the pool, and they look like they're a beekeeper.
Yeah.
They're completely covered.
Completely covered.
And they got a hat on and a face shield. And it's like, do you need to go that extreme?
Yeah.
My personal opinion is no, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. We got to live our lives.
Yep.
And we got to enjoy our lives. And if you're going to be at the beach, you want to enjoy the beach. You don't want to be afraid of the sun. And that's something that as dermatology providers, we want to help our patients to navigate, is living their lives in a normal way without being scared of everything.
Everything, yeah. No agoraphobia here. So to just kind of get a background on sunscreens, let's talk about, how they actually work. And there's two main types of sunscreen, physical and chemical. So let's break that down and talk about the differences and the similarities.
Yeah, so the most common one that you can probably find over the counter are the chemical sunscreens. Those are most often the sprays that you're going to find. They're the easiest to apply. And they've been probably the more readily available ones for most of my lifetime. Yeah. And within the past probably 5 to 10 years, the other type called the mineral or physical blockers have been becoming more and more popular. And they do two different things. So the chemical blockers it is what it's called. It's a chemical that you spray into the skin. The thought behind it is, or what it does is it absorbs into your skin, and then it's supposed to capture sun rays as before it penetrates deep and transfer it or convert it into heat.
Yeah. So it converts everything into heat. It does have to absorb into the top layer of skin in order to be effective. And they were not the first kind of sunscreens developed. Zinc actually was, much earlier than that, but it was so thick and pasty. And we've all seen those classic pictures of the lifeguard just with the white nose,
Totally.
But the chemical sunscreens were developed because they were found to be much more cosmetically elegant. They absorb into the skin better. They don't make you look white and pasty. And as we've seen better technology in formulating the mineral sunscreens, zinc and titanium, they're definitely growing in popularity once again.
Yeah.
And there's concern about chemicals and things, whether it's warranted or not. The original thought, and it's often portrayed online, is that the mineral sunscreens, the zinc and the titanium, are just reflecting away the UV light. And studies have shown that's not exactly what's going on. They do probably reflect and scatter more of the light than the chemical sunscreens, but still, by and large, these molecules are absorbing the ultraviolet rays and converting them into heat energy.
Exactly.
So they work very similarly, and it's just, are they getting absorbed further into the body? And we can talk about the impacts of that as well. So we talked about the zinc oxide, the titanium dioxide, and what you really want to look for is that it's broad spectrum. And so in talking about mineral sunscreens, in order to get broad spectrum coverage, the zinc has to be at a high enough percentage. And I want to say it's around 9%.
Yeah.
So if you're getting a zinc sunscreen that's like a 4% zinc and it doesn't have any other types of filter in it, it's not considered broad spectrum. So it's pretty hard to find. As a sunscreen product.
And what we mean by broad spectrum is there's UVA and UVB. And UVA, the thought behind it is it causes aging. UVB causes burns, which can lead to skin cancer. Both harm the skin. And so you want to be able to protect against both types of UV. And you're right. I believe it's 9% is the I want to say it's 9%, but it's under 9%, you're getting kind of a narrow band UV. You're not getting that broad spectrum protection. And the same thing happens with the chemical sunscreens as well. There's specific chemicals block UVA and UVB, and you want the variety that can make sure you're getting that broad spectrum coverage.
Yeah. So some of the ingredients in your chemical sunscreens that may be familiar to you are avobenzone, oxybenzone, octinoxate, and there's many, many others. And especially there's way more available in Korea and in Europe. But these all have demonstrated ability to block a certain wavelength of light.
Yes.
And so if you have avobenzone only in a sunscreen, that's not going to cover all of the range of ultraviolet light. And so we want something that's going to protect us down to, that 290 nanometers of energy all the way up to 400, 405 in order to actually get protection. And zinc at high enough concentrations can capture it all. But when you get a chemical sunscreen, usually it's going to have 3 or 4 different filters in there to make sure that it covers all of the different ranges of those ultraviolet wavelengths.
Yeah. And another thing that I like to look for is make sure the zinc is a high enough percentage if you're looking at just pure mineral or physical blockers. But zinc and titanium together also provides a little bit broader UV, a little bit protection as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing more and more companies forego the titanium.
Yes.
I've seen more and more that are just pure zinc sunscreens. I know there's concerns about zinc and concerns about chemical toxicities and endocrine disruption and all of these different things. And we probably should touch on that a little bit. And the study came out, I think maybe it was 2019 or 20, that showed that some of the chemical filters, when applied to the skin, were being absorbed and that the concentrations in the blood were higher than the recommended safe level according to the FDA.
For zinc?
For the chemical filters.
For the chemicals.
For the chemical filters. And so this led everybody to question the safety of the sunscreens and all of these things. So to discuss that, one is this was just a pilot study, and it did show that when these products were applied to the skin, that it was absorbed into the bloodstream. It's important to know how much they were applying in these studies.
Yeah.
They were applying the appropriate amount of sunscreen, which is like 2 grams per centimeter squared or 1 gram per centimeter squared over large portions of the body for multiple days in a row. And then they were measuring the blood. And the reality is that under real world conditions, most people are not going to replicate that.
No.
And so
that's a lot of sunscreen.
Right. And I'm excellent at sun protection. But if I'm going to go, I was just in Hawaii a couple of weeks ago and spent a lot of time on the beach and outdoors. But I put sunscreen on my face. I did a whole video on this on YouTube. Sunscreen on my face every day, but I was wearing a sun protective shirt most of the time.
Right.
And so I wasn't applying sunscreen to the body, but I was protecting it with UPF clothing. And most people don't put on sufficient amounts of sunscreen. They don't reapply as often as you should.
Yep.
And they're not doing this for multiple days in a row. And so the argument that, it was in the bloodstream doesn't always translate to each individual person.
Right.
The second aspect is, yes, it's in the bloodstream, then what? So what? There was no evidence that it was causing any harm. And that's why the FDA recommended longer-term safety studies, which are ongoing, to determine the effects, if any, that these may have. Sure. When we talk about endocrine disruption from things like parabens or some of these sunscreen ingredients, a few things that I think are important for the audience to know is when you have a chemical and it binds to something, let's say an estrogen receptor, you can think of this like a magnet, a strong magnet versus a weak magnet. And we have this principle in biochemistry called affinity and avidity. How much does it like to bind and how strongly does it bind? So these ingredients that were shown in rat or mice studies to cause endocrine disruption, they were orally feeding the compound to the mice. Orally feeding it to them in doses that would be impossible to achieve with topical application.
Right.
You'd have to cover yourself head to toe in sunscreen, I think for like 31 to 37 years daily in order to get the same exposure.
These levels.
Now, these molecules, they do not have the strength of binding to the receptor. They're like thousands of times less than what estrogen naturally would do.
Sure.
And so let's say you have estrogen in your body and you have a little bit of methylparaben, if we're going to talk about that one, and they're competing for a binding site. The estrogen is like a strong magnet versus like a tiny little weak magnet. Yeah. Estrogen is going to take precedence in binding to that site. So those are things to be aware of. You have to follow the evidence and then once you know the evidence, make a decision that's right for you. we're certainly not the type that says you have to wear a chemical sunscreen every day over your whole body. We want you to not burn. We want you to make reasonably informed decisions that work in your lifestyle.
Yeah. And we want you to be able to live your life without fear of cancer constantly, or fear of the sun or going outside. So I tell my patients all the time who say they're going to go to, either going to cruise to Mexico or things like that. I have my recommendations for sunscreens and things like that. I give them the recommendations that we'll talk about here. But I tell them, enjoy your life. Don't live in fear. They're at the dermatology office getting skin checks, and it's important to know there are things you can do to protect yourself, just like you did in Hawaii. You can wear the UPF clothing, and you could also wear sunscreen and go enjoy the water. Go get in the water. You don't have to sit in the bee suits under the umbrellas.
You should, and this is just anecdotal, but I feel like I have patients that will come in, they'll get diagnosed with a skin cancer, and then they're militant about their sun protection, which can serve a purpose to protect them. But most of the damage that led to the skin cancer was done years ago. And I feel like my patients who stop going out in the sun altogether, they almost become shut-ins in their own home and in their life. I feel like their health suffers more than those who, all right, I'll be a little better about sunscreen, and I understand that I'll probably have some things pop up. But their vitality and their energy and their happiness are better than those people who become complete shut-ins and completely fear the sun. So that's my anecdotal experience.
I see the same thing in clinic.
So when we're buying sunscreen, SPF is the main thing that people are looking for. Austin, explain to us what SPF means and what the difference is between a 30, a 50, a 70.
So SPF stands for sun protection factor, and what it means is it takes that, so let's say it's 30 SPF, it's a 10 times multiplier. So they say how long, basically it tells you how long you can be outside with protection. And so an SPF 30, theoretically, you could be in the sun for 300 minutes without burning. Now, that's under very specific conditions. So just like you had explained, you need to have a certain amount of sunscreen per square inch of skin. And as we've discussed in previous episodes, no one's applying that.
Almost no one.
And so in reality, your 30 SPF is probably a 15 or a 10 SPF, depending on how much sunscreen you put on. Did you rub it in? Did you get all the areas? So the real world application to the SPF is probably much less than what you're getting. So the big question is SPF 100 50 times better than SPF 50?
Right. And it's not necessarily the case, because an SPF 30 blocks maybe like 96, 97% of UVB rays. We're just talking UVB. When we talk about SPF, it's only a rating of the UVB, the ability to burn. Whereas an SPF 50 might block 97%. So you think that's a 3% difference. But if going from 94 to 97, we're still working with 6% of the exposure, and we're cutting that in half. So I do like to go to a higher SPF, because under real world applications, I still am a real world application person. I do probably put on more than the average, but I'm sure that it's not always, a gram per centimeter squared. So when I go higher, I get a little bit better protection. When the ultraviolet light starts to hit the sunscreen, it starts breaking down immediately. These things their job is to gobble them up, but like once it does its job, then it's not able to catch another ray. And so this breaks down over time. So you also have to think about what is the intensity of the sun where you're at. And if you are putting on an SPF 30 and you're going out and the UV index is 2 or 3 that day, it's a very different scenario than putting on an SPF 30 under an SPF or UV index of 11 and going out. You'll need to be much more cognizant about how frequently you reapply, the amount that you reapply based on the intensity of the sun, whether you're in water or not. And water resistance is another factor that we also have to consider.
Totally. Something that I talk to my patients a lot about is the UV index. And I'm realizing it's not as well known where to find that information. Our phones and our smartwatches tell us. So if you have an Apple Watch, you can go to the weather app or complication or whatever it's called, scroll down, or I think you can tap in the middle now is what you have to do, and it'll eventually pull up the UV index for the day. Your phone, same thing, go to the weather app and scroll down. It'll show you what the UV index is, and it has its own recommendations of red, green, or blue, or red, yellow, and green. But what I typically will tell my patients is early morning or late evening sun, you can put on like a low SPF and be okay usually. If your shadow is shorter than you are, that's a little bit, the sun's higher up, you're getting more UV, put sunscreen on, cover your skin, be protective, or use a higher SPF. And if your shadow is longer than you are, then okay, it's probably a lower UV index, and you don't have to worry as much.
Yeah. When the sun is low in the sky, which is early in the morning or late in the evening, those ultraviolet rays are traveling through more of the atmosphere before they get to you. So it does filter some out. I had an interesting conversation with a friend and his wife, and she asked me to clarify something because my friend had told her, and you don't have to put on sunscreen after 6 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't get burned after 6 p.m. And I was like, no, that's definitely not true.
Yeah.
Like you think about in Idaho in the summer, it can be light till almost 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so you've got 4 hours, and it's still hot at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
I drive home, even now it's August.
Some of the hottest times of the day is like 5 or 6.
So hot, yeah. So you can get burned still after 6 p.m. And she's like, I knew it. I knew he was wrong. And so I settled this for him. And I don't think my friend would mind. I'm not going to name him, obviously. And unfortunately, he was just diagnosed with an early melanoma. They caught it early, and they're getting it treated. He's going to be just fine. But I'm like, if you'd have put on sunscreen after 6 o'clock your whole life, you wouldn't have got this.
It's sad that he got melanoma, but it's his wife's like, I told you.
I told you. So he would tell his kids, you don't have to put that on. You're just wasting sunscreen.
Oh, no.
You can't waste it.
Yep.
So
and then another factor also is what are you doing?
Yeah.
So, and you mentioned if you're going out in the water, or if you're like, if I'm going mountain biking and I'm just sweating profusely, which happens, then I probably want to reapply more often.
Yeah.
But
and we haven't even gotten into the different types of sunscreens, which we will touch on, but there's so many ways to make it easy and convenient to reapply. Yeah. I've certainly, had sunscreen on and jumped in my cold plunge, and I can see that stuff come out in the water.
Oh, yeah.
And so we know that happens when you get in the water. So I think this reef-safe consideration is something to understand. And there was a lot of concern that things like oxybenzone were damaging the coral reef. Yep. And, I think there's probably something to that, but further studies showed that the concentrations of these ingredients in the ocean water is so vast, and it can get diluted so much, that it probably wasn't reaching any critical level to damage the reef.
Right.
And that a lot of this damage and things were more due to human activity and the warming of the oceans, because they have gone up slightly over the past 50 years, and the coral are very sensitive to that. So that's not to say that these chemicals can't damage the reef. Yeah. However, it may not be the primary driver. And then we have now states and countries that have legislated the sunscreen ingredients where if you're in Hawaii, you cannot buy something with oxybenzone.
Yep. Chemicals are basically out in those places.
Yeah, and I think the biggest challenge with that is, does it make it harder for people to obtain sunscreen, sun protective coverage? And we know that the ultraviolet light does increase your risk of skin cancer and, of course, of aging of the skin. And so when these laws get passed, they're very hard to undo.
Right.
When further science has showed maybe that wasn't the problem in the first place. And so I'm always... I like to leave public health up to the public health experts and not always with the politicians. Politicians can be well-informed or ill-informed sometimes.
Yep.
But once something gets passed, it's hard to walk that back.
Yeah. And a good rule of thumb is just to use, if you're in Hawaii or a place like that, just use the sunscreen that they recommend. It's not that it's bad. I think their main recommendation there is zinc oxide. Yeah,
when we were there, we bought Sunbum. It was a chemical sunscreen, but it didn't contain the banned ingredients for Hawaii. It was no trouble really for us to find what we needed, but the concern is if they start outlawing more and more of these chemicals, because there was an initiative in Hawaii that they tried a year or two later to ban additional ingredients that failed in their legislation.
Oh, really?
So the first one passed, the second one failed, and so it would just increasingly become more difficult.
Yeah, and then the concern is people just say, forget it, I'm not going to wear sunscreen. Yeah. And now you have tons of people getting skin cancer there because it's a beach.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what the SPF is. You need to reapply. If you're in the water, it's every 40 or 80 minutes, depending on the rating on the sunscreen bottle. And it doesn't matter if you have an SPF 30 or an SPF 100, you still need to be reapplying. And some of the areas are now no longer letting sunscreen companies market anything greater than a 50 because people would put it on and then have a false sense of security that they were protected for way longer.
Yes.
And then they were getting burned and suffering the consequences. So there's pros and cons to both arguments, in my opinion. Like, if something really can offer 100 level protection, then that's good. But I can understand how it would also potentially give somebody a false sense of security.
Yeah. And we've definitely seen that in studies where sunscreen does give people a false sense of securities. And that's why we've seen the rumors or myths going around saying that the more we've used sunscreen, the more skin cancers we're getting. But they're looking at two separate populations.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Correlation is not causation. I saw a great video yesterday, and it was the use of glyphosate in the food in agriculture.
Yes.
And the rates of celiac disease. And both of the lines, they were like mirrors, just going up at the same time.
Yes,
and
that's been a big hot topic.
It's a hot topic. And the creator that was responding to this video was showing that obviously these trends follow the same direction. And the same could be said for sunscreen availability and the rates of melanoma going up. But correlation does not equal causation. And she pulled up a graph that said consumption of organic food and rates of autism. And she's like, I could make the argument, if we want to use that kind of science, that the more people eat organic food, the higher the rates of autism go. And it's like most people would dismiss that as being ridiculous.
Yes.
But it's the same level of scrutiny and evidence that we're, applying to this other
interesting
conclusion. So
you need to send me that. I want to.
Yeah, I'll find it and I'll share that. But there's a whole website, and I'll have to go look it up, where you can basically type in any two things and get graph trends for them. So you can come up with like
wild things.
There was one, and it was like the number of clowns and like some other disparate health outcome, like the number of shark attacks and the number of clowns performing at circuses across the world, like how they've both gone up. It's like, does one cause the other? Obviously not. But again, correlation doesn't equal causation, but it can inform you to make hypotheses and do studies to understand if there is a causation.
Yeah,
so
totally.
We got a good background on sunscreen. Let's transition to a little Did You Know? My favorite part.
It's always fun to look up things revolving the topics that we discuss.
Find some fun facts. So the one that I found, Austin, is the first commercially available sunscreen was developed back around World War II. And it was called Red Vet Pet, or Red Veterinary Petrolatum. And it was it was based in a petrolatum, like a Vaseline type product with a red dye, and it offered a 2-ish SPF level, but it left you red, like you were literally putting on red paint. So if you think a white cast is bad, just be grateful that we're not still relying on like red dye.
Red Vaseline.
Red Vaseline to protect yourself.
Amazing.
Things have gotten a lot better.
I'm glad, yeah. Well, going back even further, I was looking up what did like ancient peoples use to protect themselves from the sun, especially people who lived in deserts like the Egyptians. And they actually did use, it says they used rice bran oil, jasmine, lupine, and olive oil to protect from the sun. Probably very low SPF as well.
I feel like olive oil would make you burn more. I just envision Kramer soaking himself in butter from Seinfeld.
Exactly. The Greeks used olive oil mixed with sand and clay. So maybe the olive oil is kind of the base.
The base, maybe. Yeah, I can see sand and clay as offering protection.
Yeah. I found that India used sandalwood paste, turmeric, and sesame oil. And apparently sesame oil absorbs about 30% of UV rays.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So not anywhere near the 94% of an SPF 30, but does provide some protection.
Some protection. And then Pacific Islanders, this one was interesting, is coconut oil and crushed herbs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that just literally sits on top of your skin.
Protects you. So
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I thought that was kind of fun.
The clay, I just envision like the Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger when he smears mud on his
Yes.
face, like getting ready to go into battle,
Try
so
to
the thing can
prevent
see
his
his
heat.
heat signature. So,
I can see that. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. All right, well, now we've learned a little bit, and let's move into how to choose the right sunscreen for you.
Always a good question. So it depends on a few different things. Your skin type. So if you have darker skin, you may not want to lean into the zinc oxides or titanium dioxides because it does leave a little bit of a white cast, and that could show. Chemical blockers are a little more elegant. They're clear. You're not going to leave a cast or anything like that. Also, the zinc and titaniums, because they're thicker, if you have kind of acne-prone skin or things like that, depending on the brand and type that you use, could clog the pores. But also, like oil-based and things like that, thicker can affect your skin type depending on the condition that you have or your skin type.
Yeah. So there was a brand recently that came out with a zinc-based sunscreen. It had a little bit of a tint in it, and they advertised it as safe for all skin types. And this brand is primarily, I think it's a black-owned brand, and they really market in that area. Yeah. And they basically pushed the sunscreen out, and they caught so much backlash because in the promotional videos they did, influencers were breaking down, showing like they're not even using enough sunscreen, and they're like, I've measured it out. I'm a cosmetic chemist. Let me show you what happens when you use enough of the sunscreen. And it was evident that the company was marketing it in a deceptive way. That it just, I don't think they were trying to be deceptive, but I think their quality internal discussions just failed. And they put a product out. They made claims about the invisibility of the sunscreen, and they caught a lot of backlash for it.
You can't. It's hard because people will use it and realize that it's a fraud, and then because of the day and age we live in with social media, everyone's gonna know real fast.
Yeah. It's it did not go well for them, and I don't know if they pulled the sunscreen to reformulate, or I know they issued a public apology.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's always it's a bad sign when a brand has to do that.
Yeah.
So it is that, chemical sunscreens are often preferred to avoid the white cast.
Yeah.
Even though I'm fairly fair skinned, I still use a chemical sunscreen most of the time.
Yep. So chemical sunscreens, you can get zinc oxides that are in sprays. They're a little bit harder, sometimes a little bit goopier.
Yeah.
I will use a mineral sunscreen typically on the easy to apply areas, and then a chemical sunscreen elsewhere.
Yeah.
And especially on my kids who are just wiggling around. They just want to get into the pool.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, we got to let it sit in the shade for a little bit, let that sunscreen set, and then go have fun.
Yeah. We had a pretty good routine when we were in Hawaii to like sunscreen up before we left the hotel room. So by the time we got to the car and drove to the beach or went on our excursion or something, like it was soaked in, and then reapply during the day. But chemical sunscreens are just by and large more cosmetically elegant, especially the ones you get out of Korea and Japan. I don't know if you've used any of those.
I haven't used any of the Korean products. I've been seeing them all over, and I want to try to use them.
There was a crackdown because it used to be that these companies could ship them in and you could buy them on certain websites, but the FDA kind of cracked down on that. And so now some of these companies are basically reformulating their products for the American market, and people will get online and think they're buying, Beauty of Joseon, which is a great sunscreen.
Yeah. But
if you look at the filters, it's different in the U.S. market now than it is in the Korean market. It still has a great feel to it, but it's just not the same.
I bet. Yeah.
So your skin type, I agree with everything. If you're oily or dry, you might choose a different texture. Neutrogena has a Hydro Boost sunscreen that's super lightweight.
Yes.
Very, very nice.
Use that. I like it.
We've talked about the Mantle sunscreen as being just completely invisible on all skin types. Whether you're going to be outdoors, whether you're going to be outdoors in the water, hiking, sweating, all of those types of things will inform. And I'm a big fan of sprays on my arms and legs. Like when I have to get it through hair, lotion just isn't as easy.
Yeah, it's not. I will say I have never tried a stick sunscreen until recently, and I really like it.
Which one did you use?
I use the Elta MD UV stick, and I was wearing like adventuring kind of sandals that can get wet and stuff like that, and it was really nice to I didn't have a spray on me where I could just spray my feet, so rubbing that on my feet real quick, and it could get around the sandals. It was really convenient. And then just doing like these areas of like my face, like you can do the tops of your ears real easily.
There's a stick sunscreen I really like from a company called Oars and Alps.
Oars and Alps.
And it's a chemical filter sunscreen. It's like a yellowish, clearish gel.
Yeah.
What I like about it is I can keep it in my truck and it doesn't melt even in the heat.
Really?
Now, whether
That's
I can't do that all the time because it could break down the sunscreen, but it's something I can keep in my bag, take it on a hot day, and it can get really hot and it's not melting like like a jar of Vaseline or something, like just gets all over everything.
Yeah.
So Oars and Alps and it's a good size stick too. It's a really nice product. So shout out to Oars and Alps.
Yeah, I need to look into that one.
We've talked about how much to use, which is kind of abstract, that 1 gram per centimeter squared.
Yeah.
How do you apply sunscreen to make sure you're getting enough on?
So when I'm doing my arms, I'll typically do a nice thick line down my whole arm and rub that in. And I don't burn with that. When I'm doing my face, I'll do the 2 lines on my fingers, not skinny little lines down the middle, but I'll fill the fingers and then I'll take a little bit and I'll just dab it around my face and then rub that in.
Yeah.
With the sprays, I just spray and go. I just spray it.
Spray and
I
pray.
do rub it in, actually.
Yeah.
I posted a video on my social media a few weeks ago of interesting designs of sunburns because people will spray real
like
close to the skin.
Sign.
Yeah, you get like you get interesting designs because they just spray like a little zigzag and then think they're good.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's good to spray and then make sure you rub it in.
Yeah.
Or spray from a far enough distance where it's getting the whole area.
You don't want to breathe it in, especially if it's a little windy. So I like to apply inside before I go outside.
It's always
and
a
if
good
I'm
idea.
spraying, I'm usually in my garage or something because
you don't
I
wanna get the
sprayed in my
house.
bathroom once, and then for a week the floor was slippery because it got on the floor. So, all right, couple of myths.
Yeah.
I don't need sunscreen indoors. What do you say about that?
I say a big myth because we have windows.
Yeah.
And we love the sun and we like to be where it's warm sometimes, especially in the wintertime. So if you're indoors all day and if you're legitimately in a cubicle and you're going to be there from before the sun's up until after the sun sets, fine.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a case. But you're going to be driving. The sun comes through our windows. A lot of cars have the sunroofs where the sun comes in. We don't even think about it. We sit by windows. You're still getting UV even if you're inside a building or driving in a car or just going from your car to the grocery store, things like that. So we recommend wearing sunscreen, even if maybe it's a little lower SPF. Okay, that's fine, but wear a little sunscreen, even if you're indoors. I do. I know most dermatologists will. Yeah,
I agree. The reality is you're going to run errands, you're going to be outside, and I just don't want to get caught off guard personally. So I'm in the habit of doing it in the morning. If I'm not spending tons of time outside, I do neglect to reapply often.
Yeah, totally.
But in the hot summer, sometimes I'll reapply before I leave the office to go home because I know as soon as I get home, I'll be outside playing with my kids. But when you're in the habit, you're just not going to get caught off guard.
Yeah. And I think that's the main thing is because I'll go home and then next thing I know, I'm mowing the lawn or playing with my kids outside and I'm just didn't think about it. Now I'm outside.
Yeah.
How about I don't need SPF or sunscreen because I have it in my makeup?
Yeah. So again, this goes back to in order to get an SPF rating, you have to have a certain amount of the product on. 1 gram per centimeter squared.
Right.
Most of the makeups are like an SPF 15, maybe a 20. There are some that are 30 out there. But again, you have to apply a significant amount in order to get that level of protection.
Right.
And I just, in being facetious, I'm like, and so unless you're putting your makeup on like Pennywise the Clown, you're not getting enough UV protection out of your makeup.
Right.
And there's so many options of a base sunscreen, SPF 30, even under real world conditions, where you put that on, your makeup is going to layer great over the top. And then you're getting, the SPF from the base layer and from your makeup, and you're probably actually getting close to that actual SPF 30 protection level.
Yeah.
So I don't, I've definitely had some patients who wear enough makeup to,
they're getting the coverage.
They're getting the coverage. And they're like, I have this spot, on my face. Can you look at it? And I'm like, yeah, I got to take your makeup off. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. You know, and they're like,
Yep.
oh, I shouldn't have worn makeup today. I'm like, you say that every time you come in. But
You knew you're coming in.
yeah, we can't see through makeup. I can't see through makeup. So.
Yeah. Well, final myth. If you have darker skin tones, you don't need sunscreen.
Yeah, this is a myth. Now, it is absolutely true that in the darker skin types, you do have better sun protection.
Mm-hmm.
You have significant melanin in the skin. And I think recently I saw Dr. Noziel talk about that giving you an SPF like 7 to 9 with darkly pigmented skin, which is still far from the SPF 30.
Yeah.
They are at lower risk of skin cancer by and large.
Yep.
But you still age from the sun, and skin cancer can still happen, even
Yep.
in highly melanated skin. So we still recommend a sunscreen that works well with your lifestyle,
Yes. Agreed.
regardless of your skin color. So that kind of wraps up the sunscreen ins and outs, do's and
does.
don'ts, myths and truths. So before we close out, we want to introduce you guys to our product of the week. This was the first sunscreen that got me into the habit of daily sunscreen use on my face.
Yeah.
I was a dermatology resident for like a year, and I still wasn't doing it because I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
And one of the doctors started bringing Elta MD into their office, and UV Clear has been probably the most recommended dermatologist sunscreen
I would agree
in
with that.
history. You know, we recommend a lot of over-the-counter brands, but as far as physician dispensed, recommended, and the one that more dermatologists probably use themselves is going to be Elta MD UV Clear.
Yeah.
It is a hybrid sunscreen, so it has zinc oxide. It also has octanoxate, so you've got a chemical and the mineral filter in here. And it is just incredibly cosmetically elegant. It works well under makeup. They now make it in a tinted version and a deep tint version. So for those with more melanated skin, you can get one that's going to be a lot closer match to your natural skin tone. We'll have a link for this in the Air Skin Store. It's very hard to buy Elta MD products online because they're primarily physician dispensed, but we do have an agreement with the Air Skin Store where you're getting a legitimate Elta MD product at a discount, mind you.
Yeah.
Every time you go back to repurchase, you still qualify for that discount.
Sweet.
So
Yeah, it's a product that I love. Elta MD was the first brand I ever encountered as a dermatology PA when I came out of school, and I've loved it ever since.
yeah. Well, that wraps up this episode of Skinfluence. Thank you guys for joining us. We are well over 20 episodes now, and
wild.
we're glad to have you on this journey with us. We also want you to send us your questions, comments, feedback. When you're listening to us, we are on Instagram at skinfluence_pod. So give us a follow there. Shoot us your questions. We check the DMs on that. And I think we're going to have to start prepping a giveaway, and we'll advertise that through the Instagram account. So make sure you're staying tuned there to be aware of the giveaway. I'm on social media at Dr. Dustin Portela.
And I'm on social media at Austin Lee PAC.
Leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'll catch you on the next episode.